TRANSNET Engineering welcomes you as part of our team. Our working environment may involve large and heavy objects, but priority on safety is part of our work philosophy. Here at TRANSNET Engineering, we care about your safety, health, and our overall environment. Hence, we all have to be highly cautious, respect, and fully understand the following hazards to mitigate any chance of unfortunate incidents. Most often, incidents occur due to irresponsible behavior of not adhering to the defined rules and failure to warn others about possible dangers. Your health and safety is important to us, so let us help each other to stay safe and healthy. TRANSNET Engineering is divided into various business units, each with a different set of hazards. Should there be a need for you to do any work that will expose you to these hazards, you will have to take the necessary precautions as laid out in the TRANSNET Integrated Management System. SHE representative exists in each of our businesses. Find out who your SHE representative is in order to become familiar with the hazards in your area. Please make sure that you're always mindful of your surroundings when you are in this environment. Do everything possible to work safely and avoid possible hazards. Senior Health and Safety Manager.
Now that we have joined TRANSNET Engineering, we consider you as an integral part of this family. Your health and your safety is very important to us. So as part of your career journey, there are certain health and safety principles, practices, basic rules, compliance-related issues that you will have to know and participate in. These will include our integrated management systems. When you reach your shop floor, your supervisors will take over the process. They will be taking you through the procedures that you need to be complying with. They will be taking you through who are your health and safety reps, and those are the people that you are going to be working with on day-to-day basis to ensure your own safety. You still have got a responsibility of your own safety. You've got a responsibility of ensuring that you are your brother's keeper. We want you to go home every single day the same way that you actually came into the premises. So we want you to enjoy being part of this family, and we want you to be able to learn as far as health and safety is concerned. We also have a number of activities where we are going to be expecting you to participate as an employee of this organization, and there is at your disposal your risk and safety department that is going to be assisting you through the journey in terms of you understanding the processes. This is TRANSNET, and we are TRANSNET. You are TRANSNET, you are us. This is TRANSNET Engineering.
Behavioral safety. TRANSNET Engineering has been rolling out a very successful safety culture program. The objectives of this program are to improve our safety culture through appropriate behavior, to promote and embed safety actions and practices, to build on internal TRANSNET excellence, to encourage managers to manage and supervisors to supervise, to create ownership for safety at employee level, to create truly sustainable safety sites for all employees, and to provide training to the supervisors to ensure that they promote safety behavior within their work areas. Your participation in these programs is therefore important, as your contribution will go a long way to ensure that we achieve our safety, health, and environmental objectives. The evacuation. Each section of our company has an emergency evacuation plan, which includes evacuation routes and assembly points. Signs have been posted up indicating the exit route. It is very important that you familiarize yourself with this information. So, in the event of an emergency, an evacuation will be initiated with a continuous sounding of an alarm. Do not panic. Evacuate the workplace in an orderly manner. Employees are required to descend down the staircase in a single file, keeping to one side of the staircase. Remain calm and, when necessary, assist the disabled and injured. Do not use the elevator or lift where applicable. Remove high-heel shoes before using the stairs. If time permits, remove personal items. If time permits, ensure electrical appliances are switched off. If time permits, close all the windows and doors on your way out. Report to the assigned assembly point. Report any suspected missing person to the emergency coordinator on arrival at the assembly point. Do not re-enter the workplace until instructed to do so. Follow the instructions of the emergency coordinator or fire and rescue personnel. First aid. First aid is the administering of first-line medical assistance to employees injured in the line of duty. In our organization, first aid representatives have been trained and appointed to administer such assistance. Legislation requires that workplaces are equipped with first aid boxes for the treatment or injuries to employees. Make sure that you know who the qualified first aid representative is, and also the location of the nearest first aid box. These first aid boxes are located in the safety stations and strategic locations in each work area. Please don't vandalize these first aid kits. They might save your life one day. First aiders should keep a register of all injuries where they have provided treatment, including the items which were used during treatment. Pregnant employees. It is the duty of a pregnant employee to inform their line manager as soon as she finds out by means of a medical certificate from a doctor of her own choice. Failure to declare the pregnancy once an employee has become aware of her pregnancy constitutes neglect of duty and a contravention of the pregnancy in the workplace procedure, which is viewed in a serious light by TRANSNET engineering. You are responsible for the ongoing treatment and management of your pregnancy with your own health practitioner. Good housekeeping. Housekeeping is about creating space for everything and after use, returning it to its designated place. It includes stacking neatly, keeping all walkways and stairways clear of obstructions, roadways clean, and keeping the workplace clutter-free. Use the correct bin provided to store waste before collection. Oil, water, and chemical spillage should be cleaned up quickly and correctly using spill kits. Material, equipment, and working tools should be kept in designated areas. Personal protective equipment should be kept neat and in designated lockers when not in use. And old PPE should be disposed of in designated waste bins. And clean up your workplace at the end of each shift. It is the responsibility of line managers to ensure that housekeeping rules are adhered to. 5 different types of safety signs or symbols have been identified so that you can recognize them at first glance. Warning or danger signs. These signs consist of a black border around a yellow triangle. A black illustration will indicate the danger you need to be aware of. Compulsory signs or mandatory signs. These signs consist of a blue circle with a white illustration showing you what to wear. Prohibitory signs. These signs consist of a red circle with a line drawn through it. The black illustration will show you what you may not do. Information signs. These signs consist of a green square with a white illustration, informing you of facilities you may use or granting you permission to do something. Fire equipment signs. These signs consist of a white square with a red border. Inside the border, a red picture will show you the type of equipment as well as the location of the available equipment. All employees must comply with all SHE signage posted at various locations on our sites. Do not tamper with or damage these signs. If you do not understand the meaning sign of the SHE signage, request your line manager, SHE representative, or risk department personnel to explain these to you. Vehicle driver safety. All employees authorized to drive company-owned vehicles must drive according to the following guidelines. Failure to adhere to these guidelines may result in the withdrawal of an employee's privilege to drive company vehicles or termination under certain circumstances. Every driver should be in possession of a valid driver's license. Every driver should obtain an individual personal driver tag for use when driving TE vehicles. Every driver should obtain an approved trip authorization for each trip. Inspect the vehicle prior to each trip. Obey road traffic rules. Report all incidents immediately to the supervisor. Ensure that the vehicle is properly secured when parked and left unattended. Always wear a seat belt. Drive with both hands on the steering wheel. Avoid distractions. Avoid pulling over in unsafe places, and where it is necessary to pull over at a garage. Keep a safe following distance. Watch out for animals crossing roads. Park at designated areas. Always park in reverse. Remove keys from the ignition and secure the vehicle properly. Ensure that the vehicle is kept clean. No smoking and alcohol allowed in the company vehicle. Do not use the vehicle when there are defects, expired licenses, or when any other safety feature is defective. The use of a cell phone, whether company supplied or privately owned while driving a vehicle, is prohibited, unless the driver is using an approved hands-free kit. The use of a cell phone on a workplace floor is also prohibited, as is the use of headphones for either listening to music or responding to a call. Transportation of components. Only trained and authorized personnel with a valid operating permit can drive motorized equipment such as forklifts, haulers, trucks, and cranes. Use the appropriate equipment for the job. Remove keys from the ignition when not in use. All motorized equipment must be correctly parked in the designated areas. Operators must know the safety features of the motorized equipment they are operating. Inspect motorized equipment and immediately report defects and problems to the supervisor. If these can't be fixed, do not use the machine. Reduce reversing whenever possible. Do not rely on mirrors alone. Turn and look behind you before reversing. Know where your blind spots are. Look for people on foot around you. Maintain a safe operating speed. Stop when you are signaled to stop or anytime you are in doubt. Be alert, stay clear, hear warnings, and look for hazards. Drugs and alcohol. TRANSNET has zero tolerance towards alcohol and drugs in the workplace. Employees, clients, contractors, customers, and visitors will not be permitted on the TRANSNET premises if they appear to be under the influence of alcohol or drugs or have in their possession for any purpose intoxicating alcohol or drugs. Everyone will be subjected to a breathalyzer test. An employee or contractors will be considered unfit for work due to an intoxication or being under the influence of drugs. He or she will be removed from the premises and employees will be subjected to a disciplinary hearing. Note that drug testing will be conducted every time you are involved in an incident and during periodical medical examination. Smoking. Smoking is not allowed in any part of the TRANSNET engineering premises or other common areas frequently used by employees that have not been designated as a smoking area. After smoking, smokers should ensure that the stud is completely off so to prevent fire. The aim of this policy is not to ban smoking, but to protect non-smokers from the dangers of passive smoking. Fires. Follow the rules and you will eliminate many of the dangers associated with fires. If a fire should occur, use provided firefighting equipment. Only trained and appointed firefighters should operate such equipment. Refer to the notice board to know who the trained and appointed firefighters in your work area are. Report fires and the risk of fire to your supervisor and firefighter as soon as possible. If you detect a fire or smell smoke, raise the alarm immediately. Flammable substances should not be used to clean your hands or clothing as they may ignite near sparks or open fires. Panic and confusion is contagious. Stay calm at all times. Fire equipment is for extinguishing fires. Treat this equipment with respect. Observe the fire prevention signs. Be aware that heat on rails or open flames may cause bushfires. Personal protective equipment, PPE. Personal protective equipment, or PPE, includes all clothing and accessories designed to protect against workplace hazards. In some situations, the only protection for employees is the use of PPE. Employees must use PPE in accordance with the training that they will receive. Inspect your equipment daily and maintain it in a clean and reliable condition. Keep any unused PPE in lockers and designated areas. Remember, failure to wear PPE can result in severe injuries, so act responsibly. All employees must comply with all SHE signage posted at various locations on our sites. Do not tamper with or damage these signs. If you do not understand the sign, ask your supervisor or risk department personnel. Hazards and risks. At TRANSNET Engineering, the top safety hazards and risks are as follows: machinery, welding, cutting and grinding, lifting equipment, hand tools, transportation, shunting, confined spaces, high voltage, working at heights, uneven surfaces, slipping and falling. Health hazards. Physical stresses, noise, temperature stress, illumination, vibration, ventilation. Ergonomics. Chemical stresses, dust, fumes, gases and vapors, hazardous chemical substances. Biological stresses, bacteria, viruses, parasites and fungi. Psychological stresses, stress. Environmental hazards, air, soil, and water pollution. The main reasons why people get work-related illnesses and injuries are due to unsafe behavior or conduct and unsafe conditions or environment. Power tools. A power tool is a tool that is actuated by additional power source and mechanism and can be hazardous when improperly used. The following general precautions should be observed. Inspect the tools before and after use. Never carry a tool by the cord or hose or yank it to disconnect it from the receptacle. Keep cords and hoses away from heat, oil, and sharp edges. Unplug the tool's electrical cord when not in use, before servicing, cleaning, and when changing accessories such as blades, bits, and cutters. Secure work with clamps, freeing both hands to operate the tools. Never use broken or damaged tools. Report broken or damaged tools, equipment immediately to the supervisor. Every year, hundreds of people are seriously injured at work because the machines they work on are not safe or preventative measures are not adhered to. In preventing accidents in some cases, it may be necessary to use a combination of the following measures. Only authorized persons and trained employees are allowed to work on and operate machinery. Make sure that you understand the dangers associated with machinery before you operate or handle it. Safeguards are essential for protecting workers from preventable injury, as moving machine parts have the potential to cause workplace injuries such as crushed fingers or hands, amputations, burns, or blindness. Any machine part, function, or process that may cause injury must be safeguarded. For example, machine guards. Report any defects or broken machinery to the supervisor and follow the lockout procedure. Do not use the machine until a defect has been repaired. Never clean, adjust, or grease any machine while in motion. Maintenance should only be done by a competent, trained, and authorized person. Make sure you know where the emergency button or switch is. Use the prescribed PPE when operating machinery. CO2 welding. The light generated by CO2 welding is extremely bright. Looking directly at a welding arch, even for a short time, causes arch eye, when the bright flash from the arch burns the cornea. Be very careful to warn anyone in the area when you are about to start welding. Use a welding screen when welding in an area where there might be passing traffic. Correct prescribed PPE such as full-face protective helmet, respirator, welding suit, welding apron, welding spats, leather gloves, and safety boots should be worn at all times when welding. Protect all skin from UV light. Non-synthetic fiber clothing should be worn as synthetic fibers will melt to your skin. Exposed skin will get burnt from the arch flash. Long CO2 leather gloves should be worn to protect hands. Do not handle hot metal with gloves. Use pliers instead. Wear the correct full-face protective helmet at all times during welding. Use a welding exhaust extractor fan to extract harmful gases. Don't weld galvanized metal or any metal plating like chrome or galvanized steel. These can release poisonous gases. If you need to weld these, grind off surfaces anywhere near the weld. Don't weld anything that has been in contact with flammable liquids. Be careful not to have flammable materials nearby. Welding sparks can travel a long distance. Keep a CO2 fire extinguisher handy in case of emergencies. Oxyacetylene welding or cutting is relatively simple, but there are a good number of safety points that should be observed. More than 1/7 of the capacity of the cylinder should not be used per hour. This causes the acetone inside the acetylene cylinder to come out of the cylinder and contaminate the hose and possibly the torch. Acetylene is dangerous at above 1 atmosphere of pressure. Proper ventilation is required when welding to avoid large chemical exposure. Proper protection such as welding goggles should be worn at all times to protect the eyes against glare and flying sparks. Employees working in close proximity to welding should be provided with proper eye protection. Fuel and oxygen tanks should be fastened securely upright to a wall or a post or a portable cart.
Robotic welding.
Robotic welding allows for high throughput and overall production efficiency, as well as improved worker safety. Yet, without the proper safeguarding devices, robotic welding setups can produce hazards that can pose a threat to operators. Never enter the demarcated safety area of a robotic welding machine unless you are a fully trained operator.
Flame cutting.
Flame cutting is oxygen cutting, in which the appropriate part of the material to be cut is raised to ignition temperature by an oxy-fuel gas flame. Fuel gases that are denser than air may collect in low areas if allowed to escape. To avoid an ignition hazard, special care should be taken when using these gases over areas such as basements, sinks, or storm drains. In addition, leaking fittings may catch fire during use and pose a risk to personnel as well as property. Check equipment before every operation.
Press activities.
Modern machine presses have highly sophisticated mechanisms and pose serious safety hazard to untrained operators. It is essential that presses and other machinery are thoroughly inspected and that all mechanical, electrical, pneumatic, and hydraulic components, including all collateral equipment, must be in optimum operating condition before use. Follow safety operating procedures at all times so that fingers and hands do not come into contact with the pressing blades. Familiarize yourself with the location of the emergency stop buttons in cases of emergency. Ensure that those passing by stay well clear of working presses. Wear the required protective equipment at all times and avoid wearing loose-fitting clothing and ensure your hair is tied up and not hanging loose.
Cutting sheet metal with guillotine machines.
Sheet metal workers who deal mostly with cutting and fabrication are constantly exposed to flying metal pieces and dust. It is therefore necessary to wear protective goggles to keep the eyes safe, as well as protective gloves to keep the hands protected by providing a better grip on tools, allowing workers to cut metal safely and precisely. Wear overalls to keep the body safe from sharp metal edges. Any moving or functioning part of the machine must be properly safeguarded. Follow safe operating procedures at all times so that the fingers and hands do not come into contact with the pressing blades. Familiarize yourself with the location of the emergency stop buttons in cases of emergency. Whether in use or put away for the night, sheet metal material, tools and equipment must be stored in safe and appropriate areas to avoid accidents from occurring. Because sheet metal can produce small, sharp pieces, it is important to clean up workspaces to avoid clutter and reduce the risk of injury caused by metal scraps and shavings.
Lathes and milling machines.
Lathes and milling machines require special precautions. Wear appropriate safety glasses. It may be necessary for others in the area to wear safety glasses too, as particles might fly off. Ensure no entanglement hazards, such as wearing of jewelry and loose clothing, are prohibited. Keep the floor free from obstructions or slip hazards. Ensure that the machine has a stop-start button within easy reach of the operator. Follow job specifications for the speed, feed, and depth of cut for the materials being turned and worked. Shut off the power supply from the motor before mounting or removing accessories. Ask a co-worker to assist when moving heavy attachments. When installing or removing milling cutters, always hold them with a rag to prevent cutting your hands. While setting up work, install the milling cutter last to avoid being cut. Never adjust the workpiece or work mounting devices when the machine is operating. Chips should be removed from the workpiece with an appropriate rake and a brush. Any moving part of the machine must be properly safeguarded. Prevent stroboscopic effects at point of operation, for example, no fluorescent light to be installed. Follow safe operating procedures at all times so that fingers and hands do not come into contact with the pressing blades. Familiarize yourself with the emergency stop buttons in cases of emergency.
Crane operations.
Overhead cranes are used in many industries to move heavy and oversized objects that other material handling methods cannot. These cranes have a rail support structure, also known as a bridge, and a wheel trolley that travels across the bridge horizontally. Moving heavy loads with overhead cranes always poses a threat to the safety of workers. Only trained and authorized operators with a valid license or permit are allowed to operate a crane. A crane license, permit, should therefore be carried at all times. Each operator must inspect the crane before and after use. Ensure all loose materials, parts, and packing materials have been removed from the load before lifting. Remove any slack from the sling and hoisting ropes before lifting the load. Remove hands from sling hooks before lifting the load. Make sure that the lifting device sits in the saddle of the hook. Verify that the load is not heavier than the maximum capacity or safe working load of the crane. And how should you move loads safely? Move crane control smoothly. Avoid abrupt, jerky movements of the load. Dual operating of crane and slinging not permitted. Follow signals only from one slinger in charge of the lift. Make sure that everyone is away from the load before hoisting. Ensure nothing links or catches on the load while raising it or traveling. Ensure nothing obstructs the movement of the load. Sound an alarm at all times to warn people of the moving of suspended loads. Keep the loads under control when lowering. If the braking system stops working, reversing the hoist controller to the first or second point can usually lower the load. No person should stand under a suspended load. Do not lower the load below a level that corresponds to less than 2 full wraps of wire rope left on the drum. What you should avoid when maintaining and operating an overhead crane? Do not carry anything in your hands when going up and down crane ladders. Items that are too large to go into pockets or belts should be lifted to or lowered from the crane by a rope. Do not operate a crane if limit switches are out of order or if cable has defects. Ensure that crane logbooks are signed off by supervisors directly after each LMI inspection to ensure non-compliances receive immediate attention. Ensure that all defects are identified by the lifting machinery inspector, the LMI. Do not attempt lifts beyond the rated load capacity of a crane or slings. Do not lift a load from a side. Center the sling directly onto the load before hoisting to avoid swinging the load and ensure that it is balanced. Do not allow anyone to ride on a load or hooks. Do not leave slings dangling from a load hook. Have sling hooks placed on a sling when carrying slings to the load. Do not raise loads higher than necessary to clear objects. Do not pass a load over workers. Do not reverse a motor until it has come to a full stop except to avoid accidents. Do not walk on the crane runway. Do not leave suspended loads unattended.
Overhead track equipment.
Overhead track equipment, or OHDE, is extremely dangerous due to high voltage electrical current. Untrained personnel should stay far away from OHDE. Necessary permits need to be obtained from an authorized person before any work is performed on or near OHDE. These activities include testing of locomotives and coaches in an electrified environment, as well as pento hookups. Employees must remember that electrical current also flows through tracks or rails. Specific certified courses are available to allow personnel to work in close proximity of OHDE.
Working at heights and elevated positions.
Many of our activities involve working at heights and elevated positions. This remains one of the causes of fatalities and major injuries. Some basic guidelines for working in elevated positions include: do as much work as possible from the ground. Ensure workers can get safely to and from their work at heights using working platform and other equipment designed for this use. Ensure equipment is suitable, stable, and strong enough for the job. It is maintained and checked regularly. Take precaution when working on or near fragile surfaces. Provide protection from falling objects. Wear the correct PPE, which includes a full body harness hooked at suitable anchor points. Ensure that the equipment is inspected by the LMI regularly and the user before use. Do not let anyone who is not competent to work at elevated areas. You must be declared medically fit by the occupational medical doctor to work at heights.
Melting and cooling.
Working with molten metal is extremely dangerous. Suitable molten metal PPE must be worn at all times, and supervision must be carried out to ensure that workers follow safe working practices. Various types of lifting equipment are used in the molten metal process to lift and move a variety of load, including melting pots. One of the most common pieces of lifting equipment is the overhead crane. The use of overhead cranes can put people at risk of serious injuries, more so when it has the potential of dropping a load. It is important to make sure that all lifting operations are carried out in a safe manner. Melting pot and molten metal should not come in contact with hands or any part of the body. It is therefore important that proper PPE be worn at all times. Workplace hazards in foundries, extreme heat temperatures, dust, poor illumination, fumes, slips and trips are some of the most common of workplace hazards in foundries and make up over a third of all major injuries. Good housekeeping is essential in these environments.
Portable machinery and hand tools.
Hand tools are non-powered. They include anything from axes to wrenches. The greatest hazards posed by hand tools result from misuse and improper maintenance. Using a screwdriver as a chisel, for example, may cause the tip to break and fly, hitting the user or another employee. If a wooden handle on a tool, such as a hammer or an axe, is loose, splintered or cracked, the head of a tool may fly off and strike the user or someone in nearby. Impact tools, such as chisels, wedges, or drift pins, are unsafe if they have mushroomed heads. The heads might shatter on impact, sending sharp fragments flying. Avoid using homemade tools. Inspect your tools before and after use. Always wear the appropriate PPE at all times, for example, eye, hands, and face protection. Report any damaged or broken tools to the supervisor.
Shutting off locomotives, wagons, and coaches.
Shunting in railway operations is the process of sorting items of rolling stock into complete train sets and moving such train sets in the rail yard or in and out of workshops.
There are various ways a shunt movement is conducted in TRANSNET engineering, which includes using shunt locomotives and non-rail-bound vehicles like funkeys, shunting tractors, traversers, and capstan witches.
Only authorized shunting equipment should be used for shunting purposes. Forklifts are not allowed to be used for shunting railway vehicles. Employees are not allowed to manually push wagons, as this can be dangerous and lead to injuries. No crawling under wagons, climbing over and going between rolling stock, stationary or not. Always walk alongside the tracks and not between the tracks. Do not sleep next to or on the railway line. Ensure that the rolling stock is scotched with scotch blocks when it is stationary and not with any other material, for example, ballast stones, nuts and bolts, etc.
Chanting Operations.
Proper safe procedures for various shunting movements should be followed. The occupation of a shunter is particularly dangerous because not only is there risk of being run over, but on some railway systems, particularly ones that use hook and chain coupling systems, the shunters have to get between the wagons, carriages, coaches, and locomotives in order to complete the coupling and uncoupling. Shunting movements can sometimes be simple and at other times incredibly complex. This is a highly specialized occupation, and shunters must be aware of safety concerns and precautions, and should have undergone the relevant training. Shunting teams should always liaise with the yard master. Good communication at all times is important during shunting movements. Employees are not allowed to fiddle with staged wagons or locomotives, as this can lead to wagons or locomotives running away. Scotch blocks are used to ensure staged wagons are stationary. Scotch blocks should not be removed from the staged wagons. Employees or any persons are not allowed to rest underneath wagons at any given time, or cross over coupled wagons, as this can be very dangerous, or crawl underneath the wagon to cross over the railway lines.
Level crossings.
Level crossings represent a significant safety hazard to both road and rail users. TRANSNET engineering employees are often confronted with these points where road and rail intersect. While infrastructure and technological improvements will continue to reduce risks at railway crossings, drivers and pedestrians are urged to be careful, aware, and to obey the road rules each time they encounter a level crossing. An understanding of the way level crossings work could save your life. Road users must follow road rules and signs and pay attention to the road environment when approaching any rail crossings, whether it is in or outside TRANSNET property. Employees and pedestrians should cross over the rails at level crossings, as railway crossings are made for them to cross over their railway lines safely. Employees, motorists, and pedestrians should be patient and obey stop signs and flagman attendant placed at level crossings, as these signs, boom gates, and flag attendant are there to protect them when crossing over the level crossing.
Confined spaces.
Confined spaces refer to any place including any vessel, tank, container, chamber, and any other similar space which, by virtue of its enclosed nature, creates conditions that give rise to the likelihood of an accident. Consistent awareness of the following factors will mitigate possible harm or injury: flammable or explosive atmospheres, harmful gas, fumes or vapor, free-flowing or an increasing level of liquid, excess of oxygen, excessively high temperatures, the lack of oxygen. Due to the high-risk nature of confined workspace, the following should be adhered to at all times. Safe operating procedures for all activities in a confined space environment should be available and understood. Permit to work should be obtained before any work is carried out. A calibrated gas-detecting equipment should be utilized prior to any confined space entry. Relevant PPE should be used at all times. Workers should not enter confined space unless suitable emergency arrangements have been made which are appropriate to the confined space in question. The supervisor, to ensure that an emergency rescue team is appointed at the lines where confined space activities are carried out. Supervisors, to ensure that suitable emergency rescue equipment is available and accessible as in line with the procedure.
Spray painting.
Spray painting is associated with a number of safety concerns. Hazardous chemicals may be inhaled, swallowed, or absorbed through the skin and eyes. Whenever possible, painting, priming, or stenciling operations should be done in a spray booth or designated room. You should make sure that the ventilation in the spray booth or room is adequately maintained and working properly. Use the appropriate personal protective equipment and make sure you use a functional respirator. Keep your respirator in good condition by cleaning and sanitizing it regularly. Wear your safety goggles to protect your eyes from paint materials as well as the particles created during sanding and grinding.
Some painting equipment such as grinders and compressors create loud noise. Hearing protection must be worn.
Some of the chemicals you work with can harm skin or cause dermatitis. Coveralls and gloves prevent these chemicals from coming into contact with your skin, reducing the risk of damage. Wear your coveralls and gloves whenever working with chemicals. Because of the danger of fire and explosions where paints which contain flammable solvents are being used, care should be taken to remove all potential sources of ignition before starting work. This means naked flames, cutting and welding torches, gas-fired heaters, and materials which may give off sparks whether electrical, mechanical, friction, or static. Make sure the appropriate fire extinguishers are available at the work sites. The emergency doors should be kept clear of any obstruction. The inspection windows at the doors should be kept clear for ease of visibility and safety purposes. Do not fix or unblock the spray gun on your own. Load notification to PEMM.
Shot blasting.
Shot blasting is a method used to clean, strengthen, or polish metal. Shot blasting is used in almost every industry that uses metal. If safety precautions are not taken, shot blasting can be hazardous to one's health. The small particles removed by the shot blaster can damage one's lungs. Typical protection equipment, PPE, and safety equipment for operators include positive pressure blast hood or helmet. The hood or helmet include a head suspension system to allow the device to move with the operator's head, a view window with replaceable lens or lens protection, and an air feed hose. Hearing protection, earmuffs or earplugs. Body protection. Body protection varies by application, but usually consists of gloves and overalls and a leather coat. Professionals generally wear a canvas blast suit unless blasting with steel abrasives, when then they would use a leather suit. Blasting equipment with emergency stop buttons, and Grade D air supply or self-contained oil-less air pumps. Care should be taken when working in awkward positions during a blasting process.
Electrical safety.
A safe work environment is not always enough to control all potential electrical hazards. You must be very cautious and work safely. Safety rules help you control yours and others' risks of injury or from workplace hazards. Electrical installations must not be tampered with. Always handle electrical equipment with respect. All defective equipment must be reported to the supervisor and should not be used until repaired. No employee except a qualified electrician is allowed to test and repair equipment. Use electrical equipment only for the purpose it was designed for. Never work on an electrical network before you have proven to yourself that the system is isolated, earthed, and tested. Proper guards, covers, or screens must be in place to prevent injury, fire, or electrocution. Maintenance department to inspect the distribution boards and ensure that they are properly secured to prevent unauthorized persons tampering with the connections. Always follow basic safety practices to minimize risks when working with hazardous chemicals. Pay attention to the health hazards and physical hazards of the materials you use. Follow chemical storage and compatibility guidelines. Maintain well-managed chemical inventories. Keep corridors free of hazardous materials at all times without exception. Label all containers. Keep containers closed except when in use, including hazardous waste containers. Read safety data sheet before working with chemicals. When a substance is decanted from the original container and not used immediately or given to someone, the decanted container shall be labeled to indicate the type of chemical. Pay particular attention to control measures for chemicals that are known to be particularly hazardous. Never smell chemicals to identify them. Assume that any mixture will be more hazardous than its most toxic component. All substances of unknown toxicity are highly toxic. Employees should keep themselves safe by wearing their personal protective equipment when working around chemicals. Employees should always review the safety data sheets, STS, of all material before using a substance. And employees should regularly review the summary of waste disposal requirements. Safety data sheets should be placed. Wear appropriate PPE when handling chemicals. Do not use flammable solvents to clean your hands or clothing. Ensure that empty containers are properly disposed of.
Gas cylinders.
Full or empty combustible gas cylinders should be kept apart, using full and empty notices to prevent confusion and mistakes. These should be individually chained to prevent them from falling or rolling. These valves of empty cylinders should always be firmly closed to prevent breathing. If a cylinder is found with the valve open, close it and attach a note stating this fact. This will ensure that moisture and purity tests are carried out before the cylinder is refilled. Oxygen should not be stored with flammable gases such as acetylene.
All gas cylinders should not be stacked horizontally, but should always be stored in an upright position.
If cylinders are exposed to heat, the pressure of the gas content will increase and a dangerous situation may arise. Therefore, store all cylinders well away from sources of heat such as furnaces, stoves, boilers, and radiators, as well as potential fire hazards. When gas cylinders are in use at the workplace, they should be stored on the gas bottle trolley or the stand provided. The maximum storage capacity should be adhered to. Prevent dirt, grit of any sort, oil or any other lubricant from entering the cylinder valves and store cylinders well clear of any corrosive influence like battery acid. Do not lubricate the valve spindle. Do not smoke, wear oily or greasy clothes, or have any naked light or fire in a place where compressed gases are stored.
Our clinics renders occupational health services. Occupational health services include pre-employment medicals. Pre-employment medicals are those medicals that gets to be done when an employee gets to be absorbed into the company. We also render periodic medicals. Periodic medicals are done minimally on an annual basis. Over and above, we also have transfer medicals. Transfer medicals are done as and when an employee moves from one area to the other. We also render exit medical surveillance. Exit medical surveillance gets to be done when an employee leaves the company. We also get to capture the health status of an employee when they are leaving. We do primary health care services. Primary health care services are meant to treat very minor ailments. We also render the management and the monitoring of chronic conditions. Our clinics renders first aid services. First aid services means we are the first respondents at the scene of an accident. All minor and major incidents need to be reported to the supervisor. On arrival at the scene of the incident, we render first aid services. We stabilize the employee who is injured, and if there is a need for the employee to be referred to hospital, they are referred to the nearest hospital for further management of their injuries.
The local clinic.
All minor and major incidents should be reported to the supervisors or SHE reps. First aiders to give attention to the injured employees while the clinic or ambulance is informed for assistance and treatment. An employee needs to be stabilized on the scene. If there is a need for specialized treatment, the employees will be transported by an ambulance to a hospital. The medical practitioners and your local TRANSNET engineering clinic are fully qualified and vastly experienced in dealing with relevant medical emergencies.
Senior Manager Environment.
Our vision and objective at TRANSNET Engineering is to have a pollution-free environment, to practice duty of care principle, and be a responsible organization. After all, we all have the accountability to take good care of this environment that we live in, not just for us, but for the benefit of our future generations. Section 24 of the Constitution of South Africa is very clear. It states that everyone has got the right to the environment that is not harmful to their health or well-being, and to have the environment protected for the benefit of future generations. In TRANSNET Engineering, we have our own issues, which is environmental risks that we are dealing with. I will cover just a few of them, not all. Number one is that of historic pollution in the form of buried asbestos and hydrocarbon pollution, where these materials were unfortunately dumped there unlawfully. The second one is waste management, improper handling of waste management, where we are failing to recycle, to reuse, and to reduce where possible. We are spending a lot of money on waste management as it stands. The third one is that of excessive use of our natural resources, our water and energy. We continue to leave the taps running, we continue to leave the lights on or any other electrical equipment on. And by doing so, we are not helping the organization in terms of cost saving, we are also not helping the environment. And the last one is that of improper handling of chemicals, which results in groundwater pollution and land pollution overall. The list goes on and on. As we welcome you to TRANSNET Engineering, we urge you to take part in ensuring that our environment is protected. We urge you to work with us closely by ensuring that you report environmental incidents as and when they happen immediately, so that we can attend to them. We urge you to practice environmental conservation methods in line with the procedures of TRANSNET Engineering. We have conquered many things in our country. I believe that we can conquer a lot as well as far as environmental matters are concerned. We need each other to ensure that we protect this environment for us and for the future generations.
Environmental Management.
The environment provides us with what we need, for example, food, water, air, and shelter. If the environment is damaged, it cannot provide us with what we need. This will affect other people and deny them the right to a healthy environment. Therefore, it is in everyone's interest to ensure a pollution-free environment, and it is in your interest to ensure that you understand and comply with our environmental requirements and all environmental-related legislation. Animals. Animals are an important part of the environment and have a purpose in our ecosystem. For example, snakes catch mice and rats. Do not injure or kill any animals on site. Report all animals found on site. All animals shall be removed to a safe place.
Biodiversity.
All the identified species or environmentally sensitive and protected areas shall always be protected. Do not cut, disturb, damage, or destruct the indigenous flora or fauna in TRANSNET Engineering premises unless authorized to do so.
Energy.
At TRANSNET Engineering, we have the responsibility to reduce our carbon footprint, always switch off plugs after completion of a specific job, and switch off unnecessary lights to save electricity.
Hydrocarbons.
Everyone shall try as much as possible to prevent oil and hydrocarbon spillages that might occur as a result of the plant and equipment. Potential pollutants are to be stored away from drains and exposed ground to avoid pollution. Work with petrol, oil and diesel in areas marked for this. Report any petrol, oil or diesel leaks or spills to your supervisor. Where such a spillage occur, the cleanup shall be done immediately. Use drip trays under leaking vehicles and machinery. Use absorbent mats and drip trays to prevent ground pollution between rail tracks. Empty drip trays after rain and dispose this as oily water. Report all environmental incidents, spillages, leaky machine to your supervisor and have the spillage cleaned immediately. Oil spill kits shall be provided and kept on site at all times for minor spillages.
Waste management awareness.
Waste management is the collection, transporting, processing, recycling, or disposing of hazardous and non-hazardous waste materials. The proper management of hazardous waste is essential to protect the health and safety of employees. Make sure that no hazardous materials are placed into regular solid waste containers, flushed down the drain, or otherwise inappropriately disposed of. Whenever possible, store flammable waste liquid and waste corrosive liquids in a cabinet designed for the storage of these classes of chemicals. Containers marked with biohazard or radioactive warning labels only are not acceptable for chemical or mixed waste disposal. All chemical waste must be in appropriate containers. Good housekeeping must be maintained at all times in the storage location. All storage containers should be inspected regularly to monitor for leaks or storage practice deficiencies that could lead to leaks. A container holding hazardous waste must always be closed during storage, except when it is necessary to add or remove waste. Appropriately marked bins or skips are placed at accessible areas around TRANSNET engineering premises to ensure that waste is placed in the correct bins. Where possible, waste is to be recycled or reused. Waste is not to be buried on site. Do not litter. Hazardous waste must be stored separately from non-hazardous waste.
Air pollution.
Air pollution can have serious consequences on the health of human beings and affect natural ecosystems. Switch off engines of vehicles or motorized transport equipment when not in use to prevent unnecessary air pollution.
Water pollution awareness.
We have a responsibility to prevent water pollution at all costs. Potential pollutants must be stored away from drains or waterways. Dispose all litter in the allocated bins so it does not get washed into the storm sewers. Do not wash brushes or dispose of chemicals, paints and solvents into drains.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to TRANSNET Engineering, where we are always mindful of your safety. We've done the best that we can to be deploying those controls that seeks to reduce our safety occurrences, our environmental pollution, and your health and that of your safety in the workplace. But I'll be the first to acknowledge that the TRANSNET Engineering cannot do this on our own. Hence, the platform in which you have been given in as far as this induction is concerned. If there is one thing that you need to take home, as I know this induction could have been overwhelming, is understanding that the safety, that of the health and environment, starts with you. Whilst you cannot do this for yourself and that of your colleague, do it for that family whom you've left this morning and said goodbye to. Your 6-year-old who's starting grade 1 next year and deserves to have a mother and a father on her first day at school. Your 15-year-old boy that has started soccer and wants to have his parent when he scores his first goal. Your uncle who's sick back at home and is relying on your salary for that medication to arrive. Your father and the mother who deserve to be buried by you, not them burying you. Your grade 12 child that is starting university next year and needs to be making you proud as a parent. I say again, if you cannot do it for yourself, do it for your loved ones whom you've left home. Welcome to TRANSNET Engineering, where we are always mindful of your safety. I thank you.
You are now part of the TRANSNET Engineering, and working together, we can make health and safety a way of life. We will carve a future that is filled with environmentally friendly innovations that will benefit the entire humanity.
We can make health and safety a way of life. Thank you.